Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 15, entitled Paradise. This episode aired February 13th, 1994. Before we start talking about this one, is there anything you want to say about the previous episode?
No, it was perfect.
I think it was. I had to look up what the episode was before we started, and apparently it was Whispers, and I remember that as being one of the okayest episodes we've seen.
Is that a new rating? Add that to the
Yes.
ratings. Okayest.
It was okay. Yeah, it was okay. But I don't need to see it again. I'm good.
Yeah, that was kind of my point in my rating of it. It didn't stand up to repeat viewings terribly well.
Yeah.
Because you know the hook.
Right.
But I did enjoy it when it originally aired.
Should we get started on this episode?
I think we should.
Miles and Sisko are in a shuttle surveying nearby star systems for potential colonization. While Miles is bustling around the shuttle working, Sisko is asking him to help mentor Jake into learning what it takes to make it in Starfleet. Miles says he'll have him up to his elbows in thorium grease, which I don't think Jake is going to like. He seems like he's very clean all the time.
Yeah, that does not seem like something Jake would thoroughly enjoy.
Sisko says it won't be easy for him because he placed in the lower third of his age group for mechanical aptitude. And I wrote down, what a disaster. I mean, maybe he could be an artist or something else. I don't know. I don't know what jobs are in the future when you don't need money.
Well, you're supposed to be working to better yourself, according to Picard. That's another reference to First Contact.
Oh, he tells Lily that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, he could be doing something creative. I guess that's my point. He doesn't have to be in Starfleet. But Miles isn't worried because he said he had the same scores. He didn't know about his own hidden talents until he got to the Cardassian front, where he had to get a field transporter operational in 10 minutes. He managed to do it in 9 minutes and 53 seconds, and he got 13 men to safety. And then the next thing he knew, he was the tactical officer on the Rutledge.
Wow. I assume they left the women behind.
That's what I thought too. I'm like, well, it was really nice of you to save those 13 dudes. What about the women? Oh my God. Well, then they talk about how fast kids grow up and Jake keeps outgrowing his clothes. And I think we've mentioned that a number of times on the podcast. Then the computer beeps because they found an M-class planet in the Aurelius system.
I think the computer did that because it didn't want to hear any more children growing up cliches.
There were a lot of them right there.
Yeah.
Sisko is excited about this new planet until they detect human life forms are already there. No one responds to hails, which Miles says might be because of a low-level duonetic field he's reading. So they decide to both beam down, and when they get there, nothing works. The tricorders don't work, and their communicators don't work, and there's nobody up on the shuttle to save them. Seems like we had a clue that that was going to happen, and now we have no way to get back to the ship.
And Miles points out there is no EM activity. This is another one of those great plans. Why didn't they leave somebody on the shuttle? What is standard protocol?
Yeah, this is a terrible plan. This can't be proper protocol.
What if they ran into a hostile race on the planet soon as they beamed down who took their communicators?
Yeah, if there was another person up there, they would probably have a plan, like you'll hear from us every hour, or at the very least, you'll hear from us immediately when we get there, and if not, something has gone wrong.
What about the computer? Couldn't you tell the computer, if I haven't given you everything's good, we've landed, beam me back immediately?
Right. It could have done that. This is a slight tangent, but
yes,
sometimes on Star Trek, we do a view of the planet. We're using the view screen.
Oh, yeah.
And we magnify and magnify and magnify down to the planet, and we can see buildings and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always wonder, like, if there was actually somebody on the shuttle, they would never have done that. They would have just been like, uh-oh, we've lost contact with them. But they never would have done the magnification down to the planet. That's one of those things, too, where they use it when it's convenient and then not when it's not convenient.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Well, then someone shouts, "Don't move," from behind them and tells them to put their hands up. And it looks like Robin Hood has captured them as a guy in some tight green pants aims a bow and arrow at them, and we cue the theme song. After the theme song, when one of the two dudes recognizes that they are from Starfleet, he tells Robin Hood to lower his weapon. He introduces himself as Joseph and the other guy as Vinod, and they shake hands and appear very friendly. And now we hear the story that they were headed to settle on Gemulon 5 about 10 years ago when their ship developed life support problems. They landed here on this planet, but were unable to get the ship working again because nothing works here. He says, and now you're stuck here too.
Well, fortunately for Vinod, even though everything doesn't work, the gyms on the planet do seem to be open.
Dude is cut.
Yeah.
He has got some muscles working in those sleeveless arms.
Yep. He definitely does not miss out on upper body work.
He does not.
So if he's Robin Hood, do you think Joseph is Friar Tuck?
He looks like him. Sisko is very confident that someone will come to rescue all of them, but Joseph says this is our home now, and he sends Vinod to go tell his mother that they have guests. This thing of being trapped on the planet really triggered my claustrophobia.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of things in this episode that trigger it, but at this point, I was very uncomfortable because my brain started going, what if people come to rescue them and they keep beaming down one at a time because nobody ever responds to anything until all of Starfleet has beamed down to the planet and we're stuck there forever?
That does seem like a Deep Space Nine plan.
Oh my God. It does. And they would never use the little view screen to look down and see that now they have, 1 million Starfleet officers all standing in a field waving their arms like, don't beam down here.
Help.
So they get to the settlement, which is a cabin built out of the old personnel transport they arrived in.
Era 1 personnel transporter. Sisko seems very excited to see this. He really seems very upbeat.
Like it's a museum piece.
Oh.
We meet the settlers who appear very excited to meet new people as everyone is very chatty and friendly.
Sisko is in full happy Sisko, smiling. He's really doing that piece that we've seen him do before where he's very upbeat and happy. But what's so funny is if you watch Miles in the background, he has concerned frowny face almost the whole time.
He definitely does. We learn Joseph was the engineer on their original ship, so they laugh that he and Miles will have so much to talk about. And then people start asking questions about what's happening back on Earth. Like one guy asks who's winning at soccer, and then a woman asks about fashion because you got to keep the gender roles in place.
It's clearly an agrarian society, so it's important to have the gender roles defined.
I think Vinod could ask about fashion.
Oh yeah, he's wearing that whole little cut-off vest thing so he can show off his arms.
Yeah, he likes to look good.
Yep.
They tell Miles and Sisko that they gave up any hope of getting electronics working years ago. We learn that the marshes around the settlement are filled with astatine deposits, but without working tricorders, they can't really explain the duonetic field. The main woman, Alixus, says they've moved on from all of that, from all of technology, and rediscovered what man is capable of without technology. I don't think Miles is going to give up quite that easily.
Plus, I don't think he's buying that explanation because he has that frowny face again. It's like he's the replicant from last week.
He could be the replicant, as we established.
Yes.
We're not sure which one they saved.
Yeah, exactly.
So Alixus appears to be in charge, and she's annoying right out of the gate. They're all annoying, these people.
Oh, yeah. There's warning signs going off here.
Yeah. Alixus says it hasn't been easy because they've lost dear friends in bitter winters. The woman who asked about fashion then asks if they will all leave when they come to rescue Miles and Sisko, and Alixus says that's something each person will have to think about, but she intends to stay no matter what. Then, when nobody is listening, the woman says to Vinod that 2 more strong, healthy men could mean a lot to this community. We're not really sure what that means at this point because she didn't say it really negatively.
Yeah.
But the fact that she said it privately makes it suspicious.
Oh, yeah. So they've landed in some kind of hippie cult.
It does appear so.
Yeah. If you notice, she very pointedly says, and I quote, she never wants what they have in their community to change.
Oy. That was a sign of something to come.
Oh, absolutely.
I think, too, we already started at this point with you guys should take off your uniforms because it's hot out in the fields.
Oh.
I think we started right away with the uniforms. Back at the station, Dax and Kira are babbling about some admiral who's coming to the station to play poker with Sisko. And Dax is like, Sisko doesn't know how to bluff. And it's all this pointless banter, only to lead us to Kira saying that the Rio Grande isn't responding to hails.
Okay, I don't believe this, that Sisko cannot play poker because he can't bluff. I think it is entirely down to Sisko is buttering up the Admiral by letting him win.
Well, that's possible, but I also think it could just be that Dax is being Curzon in that moment, and Curzon was the mentor, always the teacher, and was probably always picking on Sisko for not being good enough at something. I'm not saying he was a good mentor.
No.
But that was maybe just one of the things that he would always pick on Sisko about.
Oh, that's interesting.
Little banter.
Yeah. No, I'm sticking with Sisko's just buttering the Admiral up, playing to the Admiral's ego.
Back on the planet, Miles and Sisko get rooms in the makeshift cabin, and Sisko is reading one of the books that Alixus has left in the room. She's apparently a prolific author, and Sisko says she has something to say on just about everything. Economic analysis, political commentaries, literary critiques. She says she spent her life examining the human condition, and we've become fat, lazy, and dull. Miles says, my wife told me something along those lines last week, which makes Sisko laugh. He's always the jokester. I think it's very suspicious, though, that she has filled these rooms with her own writings and that it's full of her philosophies. Yeah. That is such a red flag. And I think that's the reason why Sisko is reading them with such interest.
Definitely a cult leader.
He quotes from the book, "The common conceit that the human species has evolved over the last several centuries is ludicrous. What gains we have come at the cost of our own core identities. Man has lost touch with his true power." She is trouble.
Absolutely, definitely a cult leader.
Miles says it sounds like it took a crash landing for her to find her paradise. But Sisko is just worried.
They're building in the episode, too. There's something wrong. There's something slightly off, but you don't know it yet.
It would be a funny episode if they actually did something like this and the story was more on the other side. Like, it was more about Dax and Kira trying to rescue them and find them. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're down on this planet, eating pineapples and having Mai Tais.
That would be an episode where they landed on a resort world.
Yeah. It truly is paradise, which is the title of this episode. But that is not what's going on here. So then they go outside, and as they are walking, Miles says the ship has been stripped of all useful parts. They run into Joseph, who tells them that they threw all of that useless stuff away because it had no use or value.
Couldn't they recycle it?
Gosh, you would think so. But Alixus doesn't seem interested in using anything that's technical. He said they had to abandon their dependence upon technology, and removing every trace of it made the transition easier. Sisko was like, let me guess. Alixus said it was a constant reminder of who you used to be. Joseph said he was the last convert to this way of thinking, but as time passed, he realized they needed a new philosophy of life.
As the brainwashing continued.
Yeah, very suspicious, because now she's coming out of his mouth. Then someone calls for Joseph, and we go into one of the rooms on the shuttle where there is a sick woman named Meg lying on a table with an herb wrapped around her arm. Alixus says there is an insect transmitting a disease, and they haven't been able to find a cure. Sisko and Miles say if they could get to the first aid kit on the runabout, they'd cure her quickly. They've got to find a way to restore the comlink, but Alixus says it would only be a waste of time. She's annoyed.
Yeah.
She really does not want off this rock. Miles then says this duonetic field is inhibiting energy, but the field itself is also a form of energy. He says maybe we could modify the communicators to run on the field itself. Alixus is like, no. If you want to make use of your time, search the forest for something we can use to fight this disease. Sisko argues with her, and she says, let's talk outside.
He gets very annoyed at this. I mean, he describes it as, this is primitive medicine.
Yes. And outside, she tells him that talk like that isn't constructive. Sisko says he's trying to save one of her followers, but she corrects him, saying she doesn't have followers. People have to follow their own hearts. Sisko says, well, my heart is telling me to get back to my ship. And she says, well, if we'd been like that, we wouldn't have concentrated on what needed to be done in order to stay alive. So it sounds like you should follow your own heart, but only if it means doing exactly what she says. Sisko says it's an interesting philosophy, but while we're debating it, a woman is dying.
Boom. Sisko smackdown.
And Alixus says we're doing everything we can for her, and Sisko's like, no, we're not. She says, I won't have you disrupting everything we've built here. And she also tells him to stop talking about the Starfleet rescue party until they come, if they come. At this point, I'd check her quarters for this duonetic field, because it's clearly coming from her somewhere.
Yeah, it's so suspicious. And that's the thing about a cult leader. They really only care about maintaining their position and the cult. People around them are kind of disposable.
Details.
Yeah.
Well, then she asks him to get rid of the uniform because it's so hot, blah, blah, blah. This is her favorite thing that she keeps coming back to.
Yeah.
She is not backing down, but I am pretty confident Sisko isn't going to back down either.
Sisko has that real look of something screwy is going on. He is not buying any of this.
Absolutely. But what I will say about Alixus is she knows how to be a leader. And I don't mean that in a positive sense. The thing about effective leadership is getting people to want to follow you.
Yeah.
Or to want to do what you want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that she needs to have difficult conversations in private so as to not show there's anything negative going on and there's no conflict, right? She also recognizes that Sisko is disrupting this community because of that uniform. So she is just hyper-focused on getting him out of that uniform.
Yeah.
And she's already spent years fighting off this stuff about technology. And then these two guys drop in and it starts over. So I imagine her to be incredibly frustrated by the two of them.
I mean, they're the definition of everything they've left behind.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And this, to an extent, ties into almost Kira's point from the second episode, where she's criticizing Dax for being so reliant on technology.
She's managed to get all of these people to look to her to determine what's in their own hearts, right? Because she keeps saying it has to be in their heart. It is a magical quality of leadership. It's a dark art in this particular case.
Yes.
But really, when you look at it like that, it's kind of amazing. Even though this is fiction, this crap happens every day.
Well, we've seen that with cults throughout history.
Yes.
She, to a large extent, is founding a religion here. Plus, remember, she has her books that she's written. These are their holy books. They contain answers for everything.
That's true.
Sisko pointed that out earlier when he was in the guest quarters, how she had all her books there. She had something to say about everything. Her religion has an answer for all situations.
It is a little cult-like for sure, but I think if we look at cults throughout history, at least in America, those cults end up being really self-destructive to the individuals in the cult. Like they will commit suicide or they'll be part of some sort of a big death ritual, right? That's happened just even local to where we live in the time since we've lived here.
Yes.
And this is different in that, like you said, she's more building a religion, a philosophy, a way of life. And I'm quite sure that that's how she's convinced herself that she's not a cult leader. No, look at the good I'm doing. I've built this community. I think that the trouble is a little bit, she's looking at everybody as an experiment rather than people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without question.
Back on the station, a Romulan vessel has spotted the Rio Grande runabout. It was found traveling at Warp 2 through Sector 401. Uh-oh, how is it traveling at Warp 2 through a different sector?
With nobody on board.
Right. And Kira and Dax head to Runabout Pad C.
If you notice, this is your elevator thing right here. Kira rushes to the elevator, Dax joins her, and it goes down slowly.
And we just saunter over there, even though our two dudes are in big trouble, potentially. Yeah.
What was funny was Kira was the one who, rushed to the elevator, and Dax saunters across.
La, la, la. I know that always made me crazy on this show, how nothing seemed urgent. And then we were watching Discovery, and Michael is running down the hallway of Discovery when she finds out that Tilly is in trouble, and she is booking it as fast as she can. I'm like, that's what you do in an emergency, not this. I'm just going to wander to the elevator.
Well, this is slightly different because Kira's figured out that if Sisko's lost, then she gets to run the station. And Dax...
Maybe this works for her.
Yeah. And Dax will be the new liaison to the Federation. And the Curzon side would certainly go, oh, it sounds like a sweet gig. I'll take it.
Oh, my gosh. Back on the planet, we're out in the fields, and Sisko and Vinod are pretending to be farmers. Sisko takes to the task very easily because he grew up working in his father's garden every day. And Vinod tells him that most people had only eaten replicated food when they got to the planet, but not him. His mother never let him eat replicated food.
Yep.
This guy, he keeps talking like he's a kid. He is not a kid. I looked it up. He's about 30, I think, at this point. And we're pretending that he's somehow a kid, which this show does all the time. This is, the third or fourth time?
Yes, I get what you mean. I was looking at him as somebody around 18.
Exactly. That's what he's supposed to be in the story. I looked it up. He's played by an actor called Michael B. Silver, who was born in 1967. So he's the same age as the actress who played Fenna in the previous episode.
Oh, funny.
Who was married to the guy who was 60-something, right?
Uh-huh.
And also the guy who played that 12-year-old Cardassian kid, he was born in 1968. They are so messed up on these ages.
I will say, at least it's a plus, because usually they use child stars, and that just screws them up for the rest of their life.
Well, I'm wondering if that's it, right? They, rather than deal with child actors, they just hire these, younger looking people. Although this guy does not look young. Anyway, now Miles and Joseph start talking about Keiko and how much she would like it on this planet. And then two dudes open a big plastic container behind them and they pull out a person. I mean, yes, there was a person in this big plastic box.
I assume it was actually a metal box.
I don't know, it looked plastic to me, but yeah, you're right. It probably was metal. Where would they get plastic? I mean, they could have, it's something that would have been on the ship.
Well, they shouldn't have had any plastic because that's an evil modern invention. It's made from evil polymers.
This whole box then would be the same thing if they'd used something from the shuttle.
Well, iron's a natural element, so.
But they would have had to get the iron on the planet and build it.
Yes, they probably took it from the shuttle.
I don't know how you make an iron box.
So that they're not even following their own real rules.
Exactly.
They should be using, that's a thought, when they're working in the fields, they should be using like wooden implements or stone implements or just using their bare hands.
Yeah, any kind of tool would be some evil technology.
Exactly. In fact, actually, if they wanted to be really back to nature, they should be hunter-gatherers and they should not be doing any farming and they should be nomadic.
Well, I think it's okay that they're farming. Anyway, they pull a guy out of the big container, and he's really struggling to get out. Miles and Sisko have a look at the box as they walk that struggling person into a shaded area and give him some water.
They both look pretty shocked at this.
Well, yeah, it turns out he was locked in the box in the hot sun for a day for stealing a candle. Alixus is no joke. Alixus comes out of the cabin, immediately justifying that discipline is necessary, and everyone here approved of this form of treatment. She asks the box guy how he is. He's pretty shaky, but he says he's all right. And then he apologizes to Alixus for what he did. But she says the matter's closed and sends him inside.
The cult leader gives her forgiveness.
Oh, my goodness. She tells Sisko that Steven will never steal another candle, and neither will anyone else. Everyone will bend to my will. No, she doesn't say that.
So she's running a gulag, basically.
Oh, my God. Sisko then whispers at Miles to get to work on that duonetic field.
Yeah.
He is seeing trouble.
Yeah, precisely.
Sisko is washing up in his room when one of the women just wanders in.
It's the same woman who's asking about fashions.
Yes. She says, Alixus doesn't believe in doors. Oh, my God.
Of course she wouldn't.
But everyone follows their own heart. It's fine.
Yeah.
She says she's there to massage Sisko's tired muscles with some soothing oil. Sisko is like, I don't think so. But when she doesn't take no for an answer, he grabs her hand and asks if Alixus sent her here. She does not answer. So, of course, Sisko goes to find Alixus and finds her writing, and he slams her book shut in front of her, and Alixus says this is the first core behavior she's seen from him.
Oh, they even have little names for it.
Core behavior. Yeah, there's the trigger.
Yep.
He calls her contemptible, and then she says, try and see it through my eyes. Cassandra, the woman who brought the oils, was worried that you weren't happy. She was concerned that all you see here is work and hardship. And Sisko is like, so you sent her to me to try and win me over to your side. No, Alixus says. I suggested that she might make it easier for you to become a member of the community. The choice was hers. Holy cow.
Oh.
She is so nasty.
Oh, man.
But this is a good example of the danger of someone in a leadership position who does not care about people.
Yeah. And Sisko says to it, so this is a sex cult? Why didn't you start with that with the marketing? I can maybe stay 6 weeks or a month.
You should have left that book in my quarters.
Yeah. It's lucky that they didn't have Bashir with them. You'd never be able to get him to leave the planet.
Oh, man. He'd work his way through all the women and then he'd be ready to go. Sisko changes tactics, bringing up that Vinod has never had replicated food. He says, you've never had much use for technology, not just since you've been to this planet. It's very interesting that you crashed here where your philosophy of life fits so well.
Oh, yeah.
She agrees and says she's writing a book about their experiences. She's been wondering if in the ancient religions of man, there aren't some new truths to be found. Something to explain how sometimes fate delivers us exactly where we need to be. Sisko says, well, perhaps one day you'll even feel the hand of God on your shoulder. She says, you won't give even a millimeter. You're still in your uniform.
He's still using metric as well.
You want so badly to get back to your station with artificial gravity and sterilized air. You are so disconnected from your core identity. There's that word again.
Yep.
Core. There is a better way. How can we help you see it? Perhaps good hard work is the answer. And then she calls Vinod and says that Ben will be standing watch tonight. And we go to an ad break. She is so nasty.
So now she's writing scripture for these people.
She is, yes.
Oh, that's crazy.
I don't think this is the tactic you want to employ with these two Starfleet officers, especially one who is a commander and used to being in charge. You can't break them that quickly, like in a day or two. It just doesn't work that way. I was thinking about, did she not see the episode Chain of Command from Next Gen? These are not weak people.
Yeah. I do find her manipulation very interesting. Do you notice how she keeps doing this thing where she keeps on using the words us and our and community?
Yep.
When really she means her. She's the one making decisions and she's giving this pretense of consent of the rest of the people. I really like the writing here because they've been quite smart about how she uses language to forward her agenda by using these words.
Right. Well, she does believe she speaks for the community.
Really? You think she really believes she's speaking for the community?
Yes. Because in her twisted mind, she thinks they all think exactly like her.
Interesting. I took it that as more negative of she doesn't care. She is the one that matters. She is the community. The others are disposable assets. So when she says these things about us and ours, she's only referring to herself.
I don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she's actually talking about herself at all.
Yeah.
I think she thinks she has built this thing.
Mm-hmm.
This community is her science experiment. This was like her plan all along. And that's because she was convinced that if she could create this little microcosm of a society, they would have to go back to their core identities and core whatever she keeps calling it, because they couldn't rely on anything else. They could only rely on themselves and each other. So to her, this experiment is everything. And now she feels, after 10 years there, that she succeeded and proven her point.
Interesting. Okay.
So now that's it's just the community. That's what I'm here for. We're all in this together. Everybody has to do what's in their heart. Oh yeah, it doesn't agree with what's in my heart. Well, then it's bad for the community.
That's an interesting take there. So we get a lot happening in this one scene. Sisko also calls out how convenient it is that a complete Luddite like her just happens to land on a planet that fits her philosophy.
Right. He knows.
Yeah.
Well, Sisko's pretty sleepy at breakfast after being on watch all night. He asks Miles if he's had any luck with the duonetic field, and Miles is very suspicious of it, but he hasn't found the cause yet.
Yeah.
Then Alixus appears and asks if he'll be working his normal shift in the fields, and Miles is like, you had him standing watch all night, and now you're going to put him in the fields? And Alixus says, well, if you'd like to be relieved of your duties, all you have to do is ask. But Sisko very calmly says he'll work his shift. Because like I said, this is not a weak-willed individual.
Yes.
And she tries again to get him to change clothes.
That is showing Sisko's just raw determination there. This is why he's a Starfleet officer. This is why he's in charge.
Well, she also makes one last little dig, which is to tell him that Meg is so much better today. The new combination of herbs is working.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Uh-huh. Then we go to Kira and Dax, and they find the Rio Grande traveling at warp speed. And Kira says, to match speed and I'll beam over. And Dax says, at warp, I wouldn't be so eager to do that. And Kira says, do you have a better idea? And Dax is like, I'm the science officer. It's my job to have a better idea. And then they have a whole discussion of trying to rope the runabout with a tractor beam, like they were in a rodeo. It was all really silly.
Well, it's a Deep Space Nine plan.
Oh my God.
As she said, if the assembly teams did a good job. So they're doing a plan that would probably kill both of them.
Yeah. These two are a little short with each other under duress in this scene, which seemed weird.
Yeah.
But of course, the plan works perfectly, even though the special effects left a little bit to be desired. Oh my God, it was really bad.
Limited budget.
We go back to the scary planet, and Meg has died. And Alixus is giving a speech about how dedicated she was to the community. And then she has Vinod drag Miles out, saying he has committed the worst crime against the community by wasting precious time. He was caught trying to reactivate his tricorder. So apparently you get no time to do anything for yourself. Oh my God.
Why didn't she just call it out and say, Miles was found trying to practice witchcraft?
Yeah. Joseph defends him, saying he's sure that Miles was just trying to get to the medical equipment to save Meg's life. And then Alixus says, "Thank you for saying that, Joseph. Now we can see the true danger that these two represent, because even Joseph is defending them." This is where I really felt like we went down a dark hole.
Oh, yeah.
She says, "And Joseph knows that if we'd spent all of our energy trying to escape, we'd all be dead today." And then they open the box, and she says that as Miles' commanding officer, Ben is going in the box, not Miles. And in the box he goes, in full uniform.
And if you notice, she even does like a strange little smile as Sisko's about to go in.
Well, yeah, she thinks she's won.
Delusions of grandeur doesn't even quite capture what she is thinking. This is a fascinating character. She is so awful.
Yeah, and this actress is really good.
Oh, she really pulls it off so well.
In addition to me noting here that there's no way this ends well for the woman,
yeah,
I also took note of how terrible Miles' hair is. It's crazy. Maybe it's the duonetic field.
I wonder if hairdressers are banned.
Well, definitely. That would be a terrible waste of time.
For the community.
On the Rio Grande, we are not at all surprised to find that the logs have all been erased.
Can they please work on some security here? This is the second time in 3 weeks
terrible.
Somebody has just gone in and erased the logs.
Mm-hmm.
Is the password Federation? Starfleet?
I think it's Starfleet, yes. Starfleet 123. They trace the flight logs and find that someone had tried to fly the runabout into a star and missed somehow.
Yeah, it had been exposed to high heat and gamma radiation. Someone was trying to destroy it.
They put a tractor beam on the other shuttle and retraced the route.
Yeah, Dax gets to do a lot of sciencey things here and actually figures out where the shuttle came from. And they set course to the Aurelia system. So they figured it out. Well, Dax has really figured it out.
Well, Dax figured it out, yes.
Kira was just being snippy with her.
I didn't like the snippy. Sisko is brought into Alixus's room drenched in sweat and weak. She tells him to sit and says this is painful for her too, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She says she wants so much to give him water, but she can't, not without his help. And then she fills a glass of water and sets it down in front of her. And somehow the glass is half full when the camera switches angles. Whoops.
I want to know, is there 2 or 3 lights?
Exactly. This is my point. They're not giving up that easily. She says, change doesn't come easy to you, Ben, but it will come if you're open to it. Just show us you're open by getting rid of the uniform. Once you've changed, you can have this water. Join us, Ben, she says as she leaves. Oh my God.
This is my point of her using language us.
Yes.
It's join me. There's no us. There's only Alixus.
Yeah. This lady's crazy.
Yeah.
But Sisko is defiant. He comes outside, still in his full uniform, doesn't even take the jacket part off.
Yep.
Although I think at this point, the uniforms are all one piece.
It looks like it.
He voluntarily crawls back into the box and he shakes off Miles, who comes to stop him.
Oh, that was a great little touch there. The way Miles comes to help his commanding officer and Sisko just gives him a look.
Nope.
And stops him. That was very much a moment of strength from Sisko.
For sure. And he's trying to make a point.
That's why I love Sisko. He's so badass.
He is badass, yeah.
He's so committed to his principles that he's basically prepared to die for them.
At the same time, though, I'm not sure what his end game is at this point. Because he could die in that box.
I think it was to try and inspire the villagers. Because they're all looking shocked at this. Everyone else has caved to Alixus. They're not prepared to stand up to her.
She's got a 10-year head start on him.
But that's where I think Sisko will do it anyway. He'll try to save the people. And that's a very Star Trek, Starfleet kind of move.
Yeah, that's true. Also, there is a chance he's really just trying to distract Alixus from Miles.
Oh, could be. Could be. Let Miles actually continue his work. Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Boy, it must smell bad in that box.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh. That's what I kept thinking, too. It's like they've had those uniforms on as well for a couple of days, working out in the fields, and now he's been in a box. This is not good.
Oh. Yeah, you don't want to think about that one.
Master and Commander.
Yes.
Miles tries to get Joseph to help him because he's figured out how to find the source of the duonetic field. But Joseph can't help because then he'll end up in the box himself. Although we only saw one box. Do you think there's 2 boxes? Would they put both people in the same box? That would be really bad.
I'm pretty sure Alixus has a lot of boxes.
Oh my gosh, you might be right. So instead of getting Joseph to do his dirty work, he tells him to look over here so I can knock you out. And then he does.
That was a bold move by Joseph. He was going against Alixus.
Right.
And he made the choice to actually do it. So maybe Sisko demonstrating in front of the villagers his resolve gave Joseph some backbone.
Right. If for no other reason than to help them survive long enough to get them off the planet.
Yeah.
Not so much to have himself saved in some way.
Right.
Yeah. So Miles then takes off on a quest to find the cause of the duonetic field with a bowl of water with a rock in it.
Yeah, it's some sort of weird compass.
It's like a divining rod. I don't know. It was weird.
No, it looked more like a primitive compass.
It doesn't take him long to find the source. It's buried under a tree somewhere within walking distance. As he uncovers a big red pulsating device under the ground, Vinod shoots an arrow that just misses him.
So I think we all knew that there was something going on here, and Miles found whatever that control panel unit was.
Yeah. Miles takes off running, and in the chase, he manages to have time to slip out of his uniform and hang it up as a decoy.
Oh, but you don't actually see that. All you see is...
Yes, you can tell it's the uniform just hanging there. You never thought that was Miles.
I think that was the idea to make you
You're
think it was Miles.
You're supposed to think that it was Miles. It did not look like Miles. It looked like his uniform was hanging there. And Vinod completely falls for it and shoots his arrow at the uniform and then goes over to see how he's killed Miles, only to find out it's just the uniform lying on the ground. And then Miles drops out of the tree on top of him in his underwear. And he says something like, "Oh, you finally got us out of our uniform."
So Miles is running around in his underwear, which actually seems appropriate for a strange sex cult.
It was pretty nice, actually. It was like these sort of shorts and a t-shirt, right? It looked like something nice to sleep in. It looked cozy. It was blue. It was good.
It is Starfleet PJs.
Well, Miles ties up Vinod and heads back to the village.
Who clearly is not the smartest, if not the buffest, in the village.
Right. Miles obviously has taken time to turn off the hidden machine and also put his clothes back on. He yells for Alixus, and he fires his phaser at the box, letting Sisko out. Sisko falls out of the box as someone brings him some water. And Miles says, "Do you know why the phaser is working? Because I shut down the artificial duonetic field." Alixus comes out of the shuttle and unties Vinod. Sisko tries immediately to call the Rio Grande, but she says, "Your ship is no longer in orbit. I destroyed it." He says, "I assume that means you control the duonetic field." "I helped invent it," she says. "You'd be surprised how many scientists are sympathetic to my philosophies."
Sympathetic.
Joseph says, "So it was no surprise that we developed problems with our ship on the way here?" And she says, "No, we were always on our way here." She had chosen this location months in advance. It was far away from any trade route, completely isolated, perfect for our ideal community. There's your "our."
Yep.
She says she hoped when they landed they would never leave.
And like all liars, this was for a more important truth.
Right, for a bigger cause.
Yep.
There's a woman in the background here with her arms crossed, looking like she is ready to murder. It was really funny. I had to back up and look at it. Now the others are all looking at her like, what? You've been lying to us for 10 years?
So she planned the whole thing, even down to the planet.
Yeah. She says, "Yes, but a lie could perhaps lead us to a more important truth." This is where the crazy comes in.
Yep.
"Would any of you have learned who you really are at the core if you didn't come here?" Everyone still looks irritated. She says, "Joseph, you would have been a repairman all your life." But geez, at least it would have been his choice.
Yeah.
"Cassandra, you would have been a technical clerk in some closed room. But now I've made you a prostitute." She didn't say that, but that's what she did. "And Stephen, you probably would have been in prison by now. Look at what you've become." Oh my God, this is the worst. She is so terrible.
Yeah, the villagers do look pretty upset that she lied to them all this time.
Right. She keeps talking to Stephen, the guy who was in the box. "What you've become has redefined the potential of man, just as I knew it would. You're the living proof." "What of the dead?" Sisko asks. "What of Meg and the others? Only my son knows how I've suffered as I watched them die."
Oh, I'm sure that was very hard for her.
Sisko says, "You were willing to let them die just for your theories. You're going to have to answer for what you've done." "Casualties were inevitable," she says. "I had to accept that from the start.
Oh, I'm sure it was hard. Probably even harder than the person who actually died for her dream.
Right.
This is the thing with people like her. It's that bodies don't matter when it comes to the ideological perfection.
Well, right. And Sisko says, well, what if your son had been sick? Would you have let him die too? And she says, yes, for the sake of the community. I did it all for the community.
Yep, there we go. The community. It's her.
It's her science experiment.
Yep.
So bad.
She's using those inclusive words when it's all about her and only for her.
Right. Then Kira calls Sisko, asking if he's okay, and he says everything is under control. Then Miles tells everyone to get their stuff together, but Joseph is like, wait, this is our home. Whatever Alixus may be guilty of, she did give us our community. I'm not sure if we'll leave the device on or off now that we know it's there, but we'll have to decide if we want to talk to the outside world. She's right. We have found something here that none of us is willing to give up. I don't know. Now he's speaking for everybody.
Yeah.
Alixus says it's time for those of us that don't belong to leave. And only 4 of them leave. Alixus, Vinod, Miles, and Sisko. They didn't even ask anybody else if they wanted to go. I don't know. It was weird. But we end on 2 kids staring at the box, which was a very peculiar choice for an ending. But the end. That did not finish how I expected. I don't know. I didn't see that coming with the 2 kids standing there looking at the box like, gee, maybe one day we'll be in that box.
They were quite young, so I imagine they must have been born there. If they've been there for 10 years.
No, definitely. And there again is an example of, well, you're not giving them any choice. Maybe they don't want to grow up there. Maybe they'd like to grow up where there is technology and opportunities and education, and maybe they'd like to be an engineer. Like, it was really weird how at that one point she's like, all you would have been is a repairman. Yeah, but maybe he liked being a repairman.
Yeah, maybe that's what he enjoyed. That was his passion.
That was terrible. All right, well, we are at the end of this episode, so what do you have for overanalysis?
Okay, first thing is Miles said he was the tactical officer on the Rutledge. I actually went back and checked. Why would be a tactical? Wouldn't he be a technical officer? I mean, a tactical officer would be like Worf, controls the weapons, the systems for defense, etc. And Miles had just proved he could repair things. Was that a mistake, I wonder?
I don't know, it's on Memory Alpha, but I look at it slightly differently, which is maybe that's the only position they had open. Maybe the tactical officer didn't make it on that mission.
Oh.
I don't know. But maybe that's the position they had open, and they, Miles showed that he could really hold his own in that group, and they wanted him on the ship, and eventually you find the right role for a person, but you go into the one that's open.
That's so what you do you're saying business. Miles fixed the transporter and got everybody off except the tactical officer because he wanted that job.
Yeah. He liked that color uniform.
Yeah.
He wanted the gold uniform.
Okay. Well, a tactical officer would have a red uniform. Or is that
Miles
security?
said, though, gold at the beginning. He said that's how he got the gold uniform.
Yeah. Okay.
No, Worf wore gold.
He did? Oh, that's right. He did.
On next gen.
Yeah. Okay. I should probably do some more research on that then.
We should go back and watch all of Next Gen before the next episode.
Okay. I'm working through Discovery right now.
That's right.
So, with the rejection of all modern technology, which is all evil, I assume when it came to people who had chronic sickness or chronic illness, that they would just like put them on a raft and push them out to sea because it would be, it'd be best for the colony.
Wasting time. You're wasting time looking after them.
Yeah, exactly. They'd understand it's for the best. It seems that they would have real problems with medicine. I mean, one of the things about medicine and surgery, etc., is primitive peoples didn't have it. I mean, Sisko pointed that out in the episode. This is primitive medicine. If you get sick, you die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one that always gets me.
Yeah, well, any infection, you're out of there.
Yeah. And on top of that, what happens if the crops fail? If they have a really bad harvest? Famine and starvation?
Yeah, you starve to death,
Another aspect of agrarian society.
Well, I think if they get a person who is ill in some way or injured and becomes disabled or is not able to pull their weight out of the field, I worry what Alixus does to that person.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe she kills them. I don't know. We didn't cover that.
Puts them on a raft and pushes them down the river.
But you would definitely have to be worried about someone in that situation because they are just wasting resources. And that's why I don't see how this kind of a society is going to succeed.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Nazi reference again.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. She made a point about, we cured like 12 diseases or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, okay, great. How about the other 8 gazillion you haven't had yet?
Yeah, what happens if somebody has appendicitis?
Yeah.
I think they get the river treatment. Next point. Now, when it comes to the shuttle, I'm wondering if she arranged for the colonists, whether she handpicked the colonists who would be on that shuttle. So she seems like she did a lot of planning on this, picking the right planet, the duonetic field. I would assume she wouldn't leave things to chance, so she would pick people, potential colonists, who could be easily controlled and influenced.
Well, this is who they already were, right? They were already headed somewhere to colonize, so they were already a fully formed group.
I'm thinking she went a stage further and picked people that she could influence and control. She psychologically profiled them in some way.
Like Cassandra.
So you think she did that?
I absolutely think she did that. She'd been working on that field for years.
Right. Next thing. Going back to the ending with the 2 kids standing staring, I thought that was to signify that ultimately the colony is doomed. That those kids just want to get the hell out of that rural crap pile.
Except when you live in a crap pile, you don't always know that there's something better, especially in this situation where it's not like you can see something better in a book or on TV or anything because you don't have access to anything because Alixus is controlling everything that you see.
But I think Starfleet becoming involved by accident show that there is something else outside.
That makes sense.
Now with Alixus gone, people will talk about their experiences of when they were in the Federation, about soccer, about fashion, these other things that might influence the kids, that there is a bigger world out there.
Yeah, I mean, they left it open that these folks could make a different decision later, but they have no technology.
Right.
So they've just stranded them there anyway. Even if they turn off the duonetic field, they've thrown all their tech out. How are they going to call anybody to say, hey, we changed our mind, or the kids don't want to live here. They want to go back to or they want to go back to Earth, or they want to go to Earth for the first time.
Yeah. I assume Sisko would report this to Starfleet and they would send additional people there to investigate.
I hope so, yeah.
To make first contact, or not first contact because they're not an alien race, but to continue contact with them.
Well, they might need to go there if they're actually going to prosecute Alixus in some way. They might want to go there to gather some info.
That's true.
Which could ruin the whole community anyway, so good.
And leading on from that, wouldn't you want to send some Starfleet specialists to help with the deprogramming of the cult? I mean, seriously, these people have been basically in a cult that has controlled the way that they think and their actions. You've had this leader, Alixus, who has been dominating them.
Right.
When people get out of a cult, you need some kind of deprogramming. And I would think the same thing would almost be true with this, with Starfleet. They would need to send people to actually help and say, is this really what you wanted?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think my final point is, I feel this episode as well just feeds into that general, very negative public perception of agrarian sex cults.
Nice.
We see them as if they're some kind of bad thing.
Uh-huh. Nice. That's your final overanalysis point?
Yeah, that's my final overanalysis. Okay. That's it. I'm done.
I have some questions.
Okay.
First of all, this core thing that she kept talking about, what did that even mean exactly?
I think it's part of the cult programming. You have behaviors that are not good for the community, that don't help us.
Well, no, that wasn't always true.
Yeah.
It wasn't that the core was bad. She said it's almost like trying to find what was underneath everything, underneath all the technology and underneath, I don't know, whatever barriers we're putting up. That's your true self.
Interesting.
Because she used it positively in one situation.
Yeah.
But then when she criticized Sisko, when he called her despicable or whatever word he used, then she said, oh, this is the first core quality we've seen.
No, core behavior.
Core behavior, yeah.
I saw that as using it as a negative. That she was using that as a programming word.
But do you think that's what she was trying to do?
Yes.
She was trying to get to the core of everybody. Strip everything else away.
Yes, but her definition of what she meant by the core, which was you obey Alixus.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
She was a little deranged. And then I have some technical questions. So was that duonetic field planet-wide?
I assume it was just localized.
Then couldn't they have just kept walking until they found a place where technology worked?
I would assume so.
Found that a little suspicious.
It can't have had that far a range. They were in orbit and it didn't disable their ships.
It didn't. He detected it.
Yeah.
But it didn't do anything. But
perhaps that's one of those things of it had an extremely wide range.
Yeah.
Maybe it had a longer range than they could theoretically walk in a reasonable period of time.
So the reason I ask is somehow they did something to the runabout.
Oh, yeah.
So they needed to get to the runabout or they needed to interact with the runabout. So somewhere something technological was working.
Oh, yeah. I assume she had full access to any kind of technology she wanted. As the cult leader, she would be allowed to have access to a tricorder, a transporter.
The rules don't apply to me. But she would have had to turn off the field or get outside of it, is my point.
Yeah.
So she sent Vinod out to do it. Although, how is that guy going to be able to go and... I guess this is why the runabout missed the sun. He was so stupid he couldn't even get it to hit the sun. The biggest thing in their system.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. I assumed that she had some way of controlling it. Like maybe she could dial it back, contact the shuttle, reprogram it to fly into the sun, erase the logs.
In normal situations, the rest of the people in the community would not have noticed that.
Right.
But Miles, who was constantly fiddling with stuff, would have noticed it because it happened early on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's a hole in the story there. We never explained it.
Well, she could have done it at night when wait till Miles is asleep.
Yeah.
Pick her moment to do it when he's working in the fields. I mean, when he was
just
working with Vinod.
The story suspicious because she would have had to send that stupid Vinod up there, and he would have screwed it up, which he did because it. Yeah, okay,
he missed the sun.
He missed the sun. I think my only other overanalysis is just about this whole leadership stuff, which we've been talking about along the way. But it is really funny how people will follow a leader even to their own detriment.
Oh, yeah.
Leadership is a powerful thing, and it can be used for good or evil, as history has shown us. And I mean, it's funny. Yeah. Well, it's not funny. It's funny because it's TV. It's not funny in real life.
Oh, anyway. No. The worst legacy of the 20th century was people blindly following leaders who totally exploited their absolute faith, their absolute trust in them.
Well, people want to follow someone.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do. But when it's someone who doesn't think they need to grow and change, then
we see the results of that, yeah.
This woman lied to them.
Yep.
Subjected them to manual labor, harsh punishments.
Yeah, she was running a gulag.
With no hope of improving themselves or their surroundings through technology. And not one of them was prepared to leave.
That comes down to my point about programming and about the need to deprogram these people who have been indoctrinated in a cult.
I guess I get frustrated by people who are too dumb to see something for their own good. But okay, those were my questions.
Oh, I think I have one other final one that I want to bring up.
The final.
So they talk about at the beginning, Sisko and Miles are looking for potential colony worlds. So they must be within a reasonable distance of Deep Space Nine. Wouldn't the Bajorans be maybe getting a little bit concerned about the Federation setting up colonies on their doorstep? Basically, potentially right next to Bajor? Wouldn't it seem a little bit imperial?
We don't talk about that at all. We don't cover the political repercussions of what they're doing. Or even if Bajor is involved in this and maybe Bajor would settle there. I mean, you know what I mean? We didn't really talk about it at all.
Yeah. It might be a joint colony with Bajorans and humans. I will take that as a possible answer.
And just like anything in Star Trek, distance is relative to how important it is to the story.
Very good point.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to women in the future.
Yes, I think I finally finished.
Okay. And Alixus was impressive.
Oh, the actress was great.
I mean, the character, not the actress.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actress was great. This is played by a woman named Gail Strickland. And she was so familiar. I was sure that I knew her from something. And she's been in a bunch of stuff, but I don't know what it is that I knew her from because she was in an episode here, an episode there. But I mean, as a character, just through words, she managed to control and build this community. She didn't have any weapons. She didn't have any physical power over anybody, because quite often that's the story, is that people feel threatened by whoever's in charge, but she was not physically threatening to them. Those people were getting in that box willingly. That's amazing that she was able to do that.
You know, that might actually be another Nazi reference of
maybe
the concept of, the triumph of the will sort of thing. That this is her will is forcing these people to do it.
Maybe. She wasn't quite prepared for Sisko, was the problem, who dropped literally out of the sky into her perfect community. She needed a different tactic, and she didn't have one. She only had that one tactic, and that had worked on the people in the community, but it was never going to work on Sisko. He would have died in that box before he changed for her.
Well, I think that's because she selected the people that were going to be on that shuttle because she knew she could influence them and control them. And Sisko is the absolute opposite.
Yeah, I guess so.
And this is one of the first ones we've really seen with Sisko absolutely prepared to put himself on the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. To make a point.
Right. Pretty much.
Because I'm not sure in the short term, if they had just done exactly what she wanted and waited for Kira and Dax to find them, it probably would have been fine. Although that wouldn't maybe not have worked if the shuttle had actually crashed into the sun. They maybe never would have found them.
Well, this is where I think Sisko, the character, comes out. Sisko saw this as an injustice and that something was wrong here. And he was not prepared to just accept it and just keep his head down. I'll work in the fields. I know my people will come for me.
We've seen defiant Sisko before, but I don't think we've ever seen him quite this strong or quite this ready to stand up for something. Not because he's been weak in any way, but because he hasn't had this opportunity to really just say, I'm going to put my life on the line for this because this is not right. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And he was making a protest. But I will say this, in terms of leadership, it is, since we talked so much about leadership in this episode, I'm going to also say this. There is that side where he is showing Miles that you have to stand up for things, right? You have to stand up for what's right.
Yeah.
And he took the sort of fall for Miles because he had told Miles to go and fiddle with the strike order. So he was the one who needed to go into the box. At the same time, it's also his responsibility to keep Miles alive.
Right.
And if he died in that box, he's letting down Miles. So you still are a commander in that situation, and you still have somebody that you need to look after. And you also need to find a way to rescue these people because he's thinking they're being kept there against their will. Something different happens later. But at that point, he's still thinking that. So I don't think it's great leadership, honestly, to put your life at risk.
So you're thinking that the stand he was making here was potentially dangerous to Miles.
Correct.
Because he should be working to keep Miles safe.
Yes.
Okay.
Because regardless of what his philosophical difference is with Alixus, his primary job is still commander of that team.
I will counter that to an extent and say, I think the motivation for Sisko there was that he could turn the colonists against Alixus by example. And I think that was the hint.
Yeah.
But the reality of it was they were too far gone by that point, I think.
Yeah, I have this thing that I say at work to other managers and other leaders where I say, you're never not in charge. It can be 3:00 in the morning and you're down the pub, back when you used to be able to go down the pub. You're still in charge. It doesn't make any difference what time of day it is, where you are. You've gone to the arcade. I don't know, we're in the 90s in the show. Wherever it is, you're still in charge and you still have to set that example.
Yeah.
Or in this particular case, you still have to protect these people. So I worry that it's a little bit overly defiant of him to be in that situation because I worry about Miles. You got to get that person to safety.
Yeah, I would also say, do you think some of it was to keep the attention off Miles?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing. And we did say that earlier. So I think that's a fair way to look at it. But hey, I'm in the leadership side of the podcast, so I can say that. So my other thing in the Women in the Future part is this bickering between Kira and Dax. at this point, we've been together for quite a while, and we should know each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
I just found that scene a little bit strange. And that, again, goes back to that lack of teamwork and team spirit and trust that frustrates me on this show. I want them to work better together. If you work better together, you will accomplish more.
Yeah.
As my boss likes to say, the power of we.
Do you think some of that came down to Kira's can-do attitude or must-do attitude? If she's ready to transport across potentially dangerously at warp onto the shuttle, and it wasn't so much bickering as she felt she was being held back because Dax was planning on wanting to do it a different way, a less dangerous way.
You are part of a team.
Yeah.
You don't just dive into the fire. You talk about how to solve the problem. That is a screwball thing on this show where we just don't talk about stuff.
Yeah,
we just dive right in. Straight power play, as you like to say.
Because that was so funny.
It was so stupid. But anyway, that was my other thing of women in the future.
Yeah.
I'm glad we had a few female characters here. Love a good female villain.
Oh, she was great.
Yeah, that is my women in the future.
And the guys were all rescued by their female crewmates.
Well, in that situation, they're just members of the team.
Oh.
Of course, they had to fight their way there. But if it had been Miles and Bashir, they would have done the same thing. They would have bickered the whole way there. Hey, there was no Bashir in this episode.
Well, that's because Bashir would have stayed on the planet.
Hey, that's good. Maybe that's why I liked it.
You're too funny.
Well, let's go to rating.
Okay.
Speaking of that. So thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
This is an absolute thumbs up. This is a great episode. Its rewatchability is really high.
Right.
The acting in it is 9 out of 10. I mean, everybody is great in this one. And it's a good story. And the problem is, it's a really believable story. It's a story you can see in the real world. They've just translated it into the Star Trek universe. And there's a hero at the end of it. With these cults, there's usually not a hero at the end.
So I also give it a thumbs up. But I just want to say that sometimes you don't like stories when technology is purposely rejected.
Really? Never happened.
Battlestar Galactica?
That's because it was the worst ending since Seinfeld.
I'm sorry I brought it up. I like the ending of Seinfeld.
Yes.
Oh man, we're all over the place. And now we're too controversial now.
Yeah. Well, what happens is, in Battlestar Galactica, the episode after, and when they've rejected all the technology, they actually have an early frost. It kills all the crops, and they all die of famine the year later.
Well, that's what could happen here.
That's the problem when you reject all technology. There's a reason why humanity has moved in the direction it has, for the very simple reason of when you're completely dependent on nature, you might as well go back to a hunter-gatherer society because it's probably better for you as a species.
I'm sorry, podcast listeners, I pressed a button.
/rant.
All right, well, I agree. I also give it a thumbs up. I quite like this episode. The performances were definitely good. I already mentioned a couple of things that I didn't like, but overall it was good. I was quite surprised to find it has a relatively low rating on IMDb, yet some pile of garbage like Rules of Acquisition has such a high rating. It's very confusing.
And this was a great episode.
Yeah, I think the things that you and I found really interesting in this episode are maybe not things that are interesting to other people. Like, I was really wound around the leadership stuff and how negative leadership is so interesting and how it ties into modern day and blah, 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 blah. And I think you had your own set of interests.
Were you worried that Kira and Dax would beam down to the planet and they'd be stuck next?
Yes, and that would be the end of Deep Space Nine. No, I wasn't worried because Miles had fixed it by then.
Oh, that's true.
Everything was fine. Once you could get off the planet, I was less worried. Okay, that is it for Season 2, Episode 15. Come back next week for Episode 16. In the meantime, if you'd like to tell us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there and listen to all of our other awesome podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it for me.
Spooky.
I let her in because she was sitting at the door meowing.